I signed the papers on a Thursday morning, and I remember thinking the notary had kind eyes. That probably sounds like an odd thing to focus on, but I'd spent so many years in rooms where no one looked at me directly, where I was background noise, logistics, the person who handled things that when this woman looked up from her clipboard and smiled and said, "Congratulations. This is a big deal." I had to look away. I wasn't ready for that. The cabin had been listed for 94 days before I found it for bedrooms, wraparound porch, a creek that ran along the eastern edge of the property. It was 40 minutes outside of Asheville, up a road that turned to gravel about a mile before the driveway. The previous owners had kept horses. You could still see the outline of the paddock fence in the grass. I bought it with money I had saved over 11 years. Not inherited, not gifted, not loaned. Money I made working doubles as a physical therapist, picking up weekend shifts nobody else wanted, eating lunch at my desk, not taking vacations, 11 years of that, and a modest inheritance from my grandmother that I never touched, because spending it felt wrong until I knew exactly what it was for. This was what it was for. I didn't tell anyone in my family that I was buying it. Not my mother, not my brother, and especially not my sister-in-law, because telling her anything was the same as posting it in the family group chat with a megaphone attached. My brother's name is Kevin. He is 41 years old and has never held a job for longer than 2 years. My sister-in-law is Patrice. She is charming in the way that only people with no self-awareness can be. Charming, loud, confident, taking up space without noticing whose space she's taking. They have 3 kids and live in a house my mother co-signed for in a neighborhood 20 minutes from where we grew up. I love my nieces and nephew. I want to say that clearly. None of this is about them. I closed on the cabin on a Thursday. By Sunday, I was there with a carload of boxes in a playlist I'd been building for months. I opened every window. He sat on the porch with coffee and listened to the creek. I didn't check my phone for 6 hours. That was March. By April, I had painted 2 rooms, replaced the kitchen faucet, and started sleeping through the night for the first time in years. I didn't realize how much of my tension had been situational until it started leaving. I told my mother about the cabin in late April during a regular Sunday call. I kept it brief. I'd bought a property in the mountains. I was using it on weekends. I was happy. The silence on her end lasted about 4 seconds. Your brother and Patrice would love something like that for the summer. She said, "I'm sure they would." I said, "The kids haven't had a proper vacation since." "Mom, I'm just saying. I know what you're saying." I changed the subject. She let me, which meant she was already filing it away for later. I should have known what that meant. I should have known the call was coming. It came on a Friday evening in June. I was already at the cabin, already in my sweatshirt, already halfway through a bowl of pasta on the porch. My phone lit up with Kevin's name, and I almost didn't answer. I still think about that. Almost. "Hey," he said. His voice had that particular texture. Easy, warm. The voice he used when he wanted something. "How's the mountain house?" "Good," I said. "Quiet." "Nice." Listen, Patrice and I were thinking the kids are out of school next week, and we've been trying to figure something out for them, just to get them out of the city for a little while. He paused. "We were thinking we'd come up there, maybe stay a week or 2. "The 4 of you," I said. "Well, yeah, and Patrice's sister is in town, so she'd probably come too. And her kids. And honestly, Mom was talking about coming up for a few days. She hasn't seen the property yet. How many people? Kevin? A small laugh. I mean 11, maybe 12, depending on weather. Patrice's cousin can get time off. I set down my fork. And you'd want to stay how long? 2 weeks, maybe a little more if the kids are having fun. Come on, you've got 4 bedrooms. It's not like you're using all of them. I knew then that he had already told Patrice yes. I knew it the same way. I know when a patient is pretending their pain is for when it's clearly innate. Something in the body just reads it. I'll think about it. I said, don't overthink it. It'll be fun. Family. Time. I said, I'll think about it. Kevin. He laughed again, easy. Unconcerned. Okay, let us know soon. Go. We need to figure out the logistics. Patrice is already looking at the drive. We hung up. I sat there on the porch with my cooling pasta and the sound of the creek, and I thought very carefully about what to do. I'm going to tell you what I did not do. I did not call him back and yell. I did not call my mother and complain. I did not spend the weekend anxious and second-guessing. I've been in that cycle my whole life. The thing where someone in my family oversteps, I react emotionally. I'm framed as the difficult one, and then I spend a month managing everyone's feelings about my feelings. I was done with that cycle. What I did instead was call the property management company I'd quietly been in contact with since February. The cabin sits within a small, private community. 14 properties, a shared access road, a community board with actual bylaws. I had read every page of those bylaws before I made an offer because I'm that kind of person. One of the provisions was a short-term rental clause. Any non-owner guests staying more than 72 hours had to be registered with the property manager, and the property manager had the right to verify that they were there with the owner's explicit written consent. I called the property manager, a man named Don, who I'd spoken to twice before and found to be precise and fair. I may have a situation next week, I said. I wanted to give you a heads up. I explained what was coming. He asked a few questions. We agreed on a protocol. I did not call Kevin back. I did not say no. I let the weekend pass. On Monday morning, I texted Kevin. I haven't decided yet. I'll let you know by Wednesday. On Tuesday, I got a text from Patrice. So excited. The kids are already packed. LOL. What time should we aim to arrive? Friday. I did not respond. On Wednesday morning, I texted Kevin. I'm not ready to have guests yet. The property is still being set up. Maybe later in the summer. He called within 4 minutes. What does being set up mean? You've been there since March. There are things I'm still working on. Like what, Kevin? I said no for now. That's a complete answer. Patrice is going to be really disappointed. The kids are expecting. I understand that. I'm sorry they're disappointed, but I didn't invite them. The call ended badly. He said I was being selfish. He said I had a 4-bedroom house and was too selfish to share with my own family. He said our mother was going to be upset. Our mother called that evening. She used her disappointed voice, which is different from her angry voice, slower, more sighing, designed to make you feel like you have caused her a physical injury just by existing with your own preferences. Their family, she said, I know you have the space. It's not about space. Mom, then what is it about? It's about my home being my home. She was quiet. Then I raised you better than this. I told her I loved her and said good night. On Friday morning, I drove up to the cabin. I told Dawn I was on site. I turned off my phone at 2:17 in the afternoon, 3 cars pulled up to the access gate at the bottom of the community road. Kevin's SUV, Patrice's minivan, and a third car I didn't recognize. I watched from the porch. I was too far away to see faces, but I could see the silhouettes. People getting out, stretching, kids spilling out of the minivan. Don's truck was already parked at the gate. He is a methodical man. He had his clipboard. I watched Kevin walk up to him. I watched the conversation. I watched Patrice get out of the minivan and join it. I watched her cross her arms. Don was not unkind. From what I could see, he is not that kind of person, but he was not moving either. The community bylaw is unambiguous. Guests not registered in. Advance requires same-day written consent from the property owner. Submitted to the management office. Before entry, not a text, not a phone. Call. Written consent. Kevin texted me. There's a guy at the gate who won't let us in. Can you call him? I didn't respond. Patrice texted. Hello, we drove 4 hours. Is this some kind of joke? My mother called twice. Kevin called 4 times. I sat on my porch. The creek sounded the way it always sounds. A bird was doing something in the tree end to the south. I don't know enough about birds to tell you which kind, only that it had been doing it every afternoon that week, and I had started looking forward to it. At 3:45, Kevin called again. I answered. There is a man at the gate who says he needs written authorization from you, he said. His easy voice was completely gone. Can you please send it? I'm not going to do that. I said. Silence. We drove 4 hours. I told you on Wednesday that this wasn't a good time. You drove anyway. You said maybe later in the summer. You didn't say, Kevin. I said I wasn't ready for guests. That meant no. You decided to hear something different. This is unbelievable. I'm sorry you drove 4 hours. I really am. But this is my property and I get to decide who is here and when. That's not negotiable. More silence. I heard Patrice in the background, her voice sharp, though I couldn't make out the words. Mom is in the third car. Kevin said. I closed my eyes. I know you think that's going to change my answer. I said, it doesn't. He hung up. I called Don and told him the situation had not changed. He acknowledged. He has been doing this job for 16 years. His voice did not express surprise. My mother did not call me again that evening. She texted once. I can't believe you did this. I did not respond. They turned around, all 3 cars. Kevin texted me 2 hours later from what I assume was a rest stop. You need to think hard about what kind of person you want to be. I thought about that for a minute. Then I put my phone face down on the porch railing and watched the sun hit the tree line. That should have been the end of it. In a reasonable family, in a reasonable world, it would have been an overstep, a boundary enforced, an uncomfortable afternoon. And then everyone recalibrates. But 3 weeks later, I got a certified letter. I don't use that phrase for effect. It was a literal certified letter which I signed. For at my apartment in town, I split my time between the cabin and my apartment, depending on work schedule, and inside was a document I had to read twice before I understood what I was looking at. Kevin and Patrice had filed what is called a notice of interest in the property. The document claimed that Kevin had contributed material resources and labor to the acquisition and development of the property and therefore had a partial interest in it. It was a completely fabricated claim. Kevin had not given me a single dollar. He had never set foot on the property. He had never helped with anything, but the document had a signature on it. My signature on a form that I had never seen, never signed, never held in my hands. I stood in my apartment hallway with a letter, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not panic, not rage, something colder, the sensation of understanding fully what kind of people I was dealing with. I called a real estate attorney that same afternoon. Her name was Simone, referred to me by a colleague who had used her for a boundary dispute and spoke very highly of her directness. I drove to her office the next morning and brought everything, my deed, my closing documents, my bank records showing 11 years of my own savings going into that purchase and the certified letter. She looked at the signature line for a long moment. "This isn't your signature," she said. It wasn't a question. "No," I said. "It isn't." "Then we have a problem for them, not for you." She filed a formal objection that week, which immediately clouds any claim proceeding. She also sent a letter to Kevin and Patrice's address, certified return receipt, informing them that the signature on the notice of interest did not match documented samples of my signature and that the matter was being referred to law enforcement. I filed a report with the county sheriff's office 2 days later. The deputy who took my report was methodical and didn't editorials. He said these situations are more common than people think, that forged property documents carry serious consequences, and that I had done the right thing and not waiting. Kevin called me the day after the letter from Simone arrived at his house. His voice was different. Not the easy Kevin, not the angry Kevin from the gate. Something flatter with an edge underneath it that I hadn't heard before. "This is getting out of hand," he said. "You forged my signature on a legal document." "Kevin, I didn't. It wasn't. Patrice found a form online, and she thought." "Stop. I don't want to hear what Patrice thought. You put my name on a document claiming ownership interest in my property. That's forgery. That's fraud. I have an attorney and I filed a police report." A long pause. "You called the police on your own. Brother, you forged my name on a legal document. Mom is going to. I've already talked to Mom. I had. It was not a conversation I enjoyed. She cried, which she knows is effective and uses deliberately, and told me I was destroying the family, and I told her that I had purchased a property with my own money over 11 years, and someone had forged my signature, and I wasn't going to minimize to make Christmas dinner more comfortable. She told me I'd changed. I said, "I hope so." The investigation took about 4 months. I'm not going to walk you through every step because most of it was paperwork, waiting, and emails from Simone, which were always clear and prompt. And I want to acknowledge that because good legal support matters, and she provided it. What I will tell you is the outcome. Kevin and Patrice did not go to prison. I want to be honest about that because I've seen the comments on videos like this one, people saying, "Throw them in jail." And I understand the feeling, but the reality of the justice system is more complicated. What happened was this. The county DA's office determined there was sufficient evidence to file charges. Faced with that, Kevin and Patrice agreed to a deferred prosecution agreement. They did not contest the forgery. They formally withdrew the notice of interest. They paid the legal fees I had incurred, and they completed a period of supervised probation. The deferred prosecution means that if they commit any similar offense, the original charges can be reinstated and they face the full consequences. The record exists. It doesn't disappear. My mother did not speak to me for about 6 weeks. After the resolution, she called. Eventually, We talked for a long time. I don't want to simplify what that conversation was or wasn't. We've had decades of patterns between us and one. Phone call doesn't undo that. But she did say something I hadn't heard from her before. She said she understood that what Kevin and Patrice did was wrong, that it was more than an overstep. I told her I appreciated that. I meant it. I still go to the cabin on weekends. I've learned enough about birds now to tell you that the one in the tree into the south is a wood thrush. I looked it up. They come back to the same spot every year if the habitat is good. I keep the habitat good. Kevin texted me in October. He said he knew he'd handled everything wrong and that he was ashamed of how far it went. It was a short text. For sentences, no explanation. I read it several times. I didn't respond right away. I'm still deciding what kind of relationship, if any, makes sense going forward. Not out of anger, but because I've learned the difference between forgiving someone and continuing to let them have access to your peace. A cabin was not the point. I want to say that clearly the way I wish I could have said it to everyone in those early conversations. It was never about 4 bedrooms or a wraparound porch or a creek that runs east. It was about 11 years of work and a thing I built for myself with no help from anyone and the right to have it be mine without having to justify that to people who had never once asked if I was okay. The notary had kind eyes. I still think about that. Sometimes what it felt like to be in a room where someone looked at me and meant it when they said, "This is a big deal." I know now that it was. I've thought a lot about what made Kevin do what he did, not the showing up at the gate. That I understood. That was entitlement, which is its own kind of blindness. The kind that gets handed down through families like furniture. So ordinary. Nobody questions it. No, what I thought about is the document, the forged signature. That was a different thing entirely. That was a choice made in clarity, not confusion. And here's what I've come to believe. People do not forge documents on impulse. They do it because they have spent years learning that the person they're forging won't fight back. Kevin had 11 years of data on me. 11 years of watching me absorb, accommodate, defer. He had watched me give up weekends, give up money I didn't have, give up sleep, give up the version of myself that knew how to say a clean no. He had watched me do all of that and face no real consequences for asking. So, when he needed something bigger, he reached for a bigger tool. It made a horrible kind of sense. What he didn't have data on was who I'd become in the 3 years before I bought that cabin. The person who read every page of a community bylaw before making an offer. The person who had a quiet conversation with a property manager 2 months before any conflict arose. The person who had started slowly to believe that protecting something you built is not the same as being unkind. That shift didn't happen in a moment. It wasn't a decision I made one morning. It was a 1,000 small moments of choosing not to shrink, choosing to say, "I'll think about it and mean it," choosing to let the phone ring, choosing to sit on a porch and listen to a creak instead of managing someone else's disappointment. Intelligence, I've learned, isn't just about knowing things. It's about applying what you know to your own life, which is the harder part and the part most people skip. What Kevin lost wasn't the cabin. He never had the cabin. What he lost was the version of me that would have eventually exhaustively said fine. That version existed for a long time. I don't blame her. She was doing what she thought she had to do, but she's gone now, and I don't miss her. What I carry forward from all of this is something I can only describe as clarity about cause and effect. Kevin made choices to ignore. The no, to show up anyway, to escalate, to forgery, and those choices produced consequences that were painful and real and documented. I made choices to prepare quietly, to hold the line, to involve an attorney, to file a report, and those choices produced a different kind of result. Neither outcome was luck. Both were the direct product of what each person decided to do. That's not a comfortable idea if you've spent your life waiting for someone to rescue you from your own patterns. It wasn't comfortable for me, but it's also the most freeing thing I know. Your choices compound, the careful ones and the careless ones, both. 11 years of disciplined saving gave me a deed with only my name on it. 11 years of forfeiting my own needs gave Kevin the confidence to forge it. We were both in our own ways, exactly where we had built ourselves to be. The wood thrush came back this spring. Same tree, same time of afternoon. I was sitting in the same chair. I think that's the whole lesson. Actually, build the habitat, protect it,